Hi, I'm Deanna Springer. On behalf of Nancy Zeman Productions and PBS Wisconsin, welcome to the virtual Great Wisconsin Quilt Show. Enjoy this educational presentation, and afterward, be sure to explore all the virtual event has to offer, including beautiful virtual quilt exhibits, an interactive vendor mall, and more. Thank you for joining us and enjoy the show.
Hi, this is Judy from Bungalow Quilting and Yarn, and I'm delighted to be here talking about scrap quilting. I'm the author of Quilts for Scrap Lovers, Rainbow Quilts for Scrap Lovers, and Sensational Quilts for Scrap Lovers. And I am going to talk to you about how to make all those odd, bizarre shaped scraps that you have, whether they're odd shapes or odd fabrics. And we're going to talk about how to mesh them together or how to marry them together so that they look really, really good in a scrap quilt. Now we've got scraps left over from cutting out garments. We've got scraps left over from cutting out bags. We do applique. We do all kinds of different things that leave scraps that are not necessarily perfectly strip cut. And so I've come up with a great system for using these together. And there's two parts to this system. One of them is fast and furious cutting techniques. And the other one is how to organize your scraps and use the color wheel to make those scraps work very, very well together. So sit tight and we're going to talk about both of those things. Okay, so now here are my three books: Quilts for Scrap Lovers, Rainbow Quilts for Scrap Lovers, and Sensational Quilts for Scrap Lovers. And every single quilt in these three books uses nothing more than a 3.5, a 4.5, and a 5.5 inch template. Now, the thing I love about acrylic templates is that when you have scraps, you can simply just plunk them down on top of a scrap, no matter what the shape of the scrap, and just cut around it like a cookie cutter. So if this were an odd-shaped scrap, which for this video purpose is not an odd-shaped scrap, but if you had an odd-shaped scrap, you could certainly plunk it down anywhere on that scrap and cut around it with a sharp rotary cutter. And these are primarily the three sizes that I use. These cutting techniques that I'm going to show you are used throughout all three of the books, and it will make your cutting such a snap and easy to do. Now, the scraps that I use tend to be slightly larger scraps. There are tons of quilt books on the market that use teeny tiny little scraps. Mine are slightly larger. Most of mine are large enough to accommodate a 5.5 inch square template. Okay, so the first technique I'm going to show you is called the treasure box technique, and this is used throughout all three books, and it is very fast and very easy. So you're going to plunk that 5.5 inch template down on top of 2 lights and 2 darks. I have 2 layers of a light fabric and I have 2 layers of a dark fabric underneath here. And you're going to iron those scraps out and you're going to layer them up, 2 lights and 2 darks. So I'm cutting around this acrylic template with a nice sharp rotary cutter blade. Okay. All right. And then we're going to remove the scraps. And we are going to take our 3.5 inch template and we're going to put this in the lower right-hand corner. And then we're going to snug it up against the 5.5 inch template. This eliminates any need for measurement. So now we're going to remove that 3.5 inch template and we are going to cut along the edge of the 5.5. We're going to put the 3.5 inch one back exactly where we took it off of, and we're going to cut across the top of the 3.5 inch template. All right. Now all your cutting for that block is completely done. Now what we're going to do, we're not going to sew anything yet. What we're going to do is we're going to lay this out. All right. We're going to lay out the lights and the darks so that they are alternated. We're going to alternate our lights and our darks. And we're going to put the dark alternating with the light. We still aren't sewing anything. We are going to layer the white rectangles or the light colored rectangles with the dark squares. And we're making a 1/4 inch seam here so that we're going to shorten this up by just a 1/4 inch. All right, 1/4 inch seam, 1/4 inch seam over here. And then the dark rectangles will go along the white or the light colored squares. Now, it takes 9 months gestation to have a baby, and yet we always wait till that last 2 weeks before the baby's born to get started on a quilt. This is a quilt that you could make very, very quickly if you had to have a quilt done quickly, right? Okay, so then once we've got those sewn together with 1/4-inch seams, we're going to stitch these long rectangles along the edge. And then we're going to trim that tiny little piece off the bottom because you shortened this unit up a little bit by using a 1/4-inch seam. Okay, so you're going to put the dark ones along the dark rectangle units here and here. Okay, and then last but not least is this one here. And then you sew it together like a 4-patch. This is a fun, simple, fast block, and you will use up a ton of scraps. And I will show you some of the examples from the book that are these quilts. And this is called the treasure box technique. Now we're going to look at the blended hexagon technique. Okay, for the blended hexagon technique, we are using 3 pairs of 5.5-inch squares. So from my scraps, I have cut a total of 6 5.5-inch squares. They can be 3 of one color and 3 of another color, okay? Or they can be 3 of a dark and 3 of a light, or they can be 6 completely different pieces of fabric. When you cut them, they have to be mirror image of each other. So you either have to have wrong sides together or right sides together. And if you are using 2 different prints, then the same print has to be on the top at all times. Then you make a measurement up on the upper left and on the lower right. And you make a mark where that measurement comes. And you do that for each one of these pairs. Then you are going to take your quilting ruler and you're going to connect those points, and you're going to cut across. You're going to do that for all 3 pairs so that you will have a total of 12 of these shapes. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Yes, 12. And then you're going to go to your sewing machine and you're going to chain piece. You don't even have to take these apart. Don't separate them. Just pick them up in their pairs and chain piece a 1/4-inch seam down the straight long edge. Okay, put them right sides together and chain, well, yeah, so you would have to take them apart if you had them like I did. So you're going to have to put them right sides together and then do a 1/4-inch seam. Now, when you do this, you're going to get a shape that looks like this, all right? This is the shape you're going to get. Now, if you go to your sewing machine and you stitch on the long bias edge, a 1/4-inch seam, okay, right sides together, you're going to get a piece or a shape that looks like this. Now, multiple quilts throughout the books, or throughout Rainbow Quilts for Scrap Lovers and Sensational Quilts for Scrap Lovers, use both of these shapes in varying ways. And we're going to show you those in the quilts. Okay, so now they're all sewn together and I've pressed my seam open and look at the fun shape I get. This is my one piece that I showed you, and just from that simple cutting technique, when you put 6 of them together, this is what you get. And then you applique either a boiled wool or a felted wool piece into the center or some other applique that you want to do in the center. And this is how fast this fun block can get put together. And this is called blended hexagons, and I will show you some examples of that. Okay, so let's talk about the organization of scraps. There are lots of different ways to organize your scraps. I personally find that organizing them by size and by color works the best. I do have a scrap organization tree that I will put on the screen in a bit for you to see. But let's talk about organizing them according to color. So what I do is I have clear bins, and anything that I have determined to be a scrap, mine are slightly larger than some of the tinier scraps. One of the ways that I find is the best way to do that is by having clear plastic tubs and dividing them according to color. Now, initially, you're not going to split hairs when you're dividing according to color. You're just going to use your basic colors. My scraps are organized into bins that are green, red, yellow, pink, orange, blue, and purple. I have a bin for brown. I have a separate bin for gray. I also have a bin where I keep black and whites. Now, the black and whites are not used very often by myself. I tend not to use them very much. Not that there's anything wrong with them, but there are some scraps you're going to have more of and some that you'll have less of. And so I don't need to keep black separate from white, or I put the black and whites all together in one bin. Then I have a separate tub for fabrics that would make great backgrounds. So tans, beiges, whites with small prints on them, those all go separately into one whole tub. So then, according to my scrap organization tree, you will also see that I do it according to size. It's important to separate these and get these organized before you get sewing.
Okay, so here's my scrap organization tree. Now, as you can see, I've organized by scrap color and to some extent by size. So in the rectangle is the colors that I have divided them into. This doesn't have to be something that you would do. You could choose however you want to divide things. You could put the pinks in with the reds if you wanted to, since pink is a shade of red. Or I'm sorry, it's a tint of red. But it's got to be something that makes sense in your head, some way to organize them. Now, if they're anything smaller than a fat quarter, they go into the scrap bin. That seems kind of large to be a scrap, but that's how I do it in my mind. So if I've cut something or a chunk out of a fat quarter, it goes in the scrap bin. Anything that's a full fat quarter goes into a separate wire container where you can pull out the drawers. And then anything that is greater than a half a yard, or maybe even a third of a yard up, would go onto my shelf according to color as well. So this has to make sense in your head. You could do something like this, use this exact tree, but fill it in however you want to fill it in. It's just there for an aid.
So how do we determine what color a scrap is? Well, we're going to look at the predominant background color of the piece of fabric. So if the predominant background color is blue, obviously it's going to go in the blue bin. If it's leaning blue or maybe leaning green and you're not too sure which one it is, I've got a good idea. Ask a man, because a man is going to look at it for about 1 second and they're going to make a quick decision and they're not going to agonize over it. They're going to say, oh, that's blue, or oh, that's green. And then you just put it in the appropriate bin, right? Okay, so we are going to tend more as quilters to agonize over what color something is. Just try to make it as simple as possible and put it in the bin that you think is the most correct. So look at that predominant background color. What if a scrap doesn't have a predominant background color? What if you have a scrap that looks like this? This is a hard to place piece. This is a very hard to place piece. That's what, when I refer in the rest of the video as scraps that are hard to place, this is kind of what I'm talking about. There's no real predominant background color. You wouldn't put this in with the blacks, right? Even though the background color is black. So what I have, in addition to all my colored tubs, is I have a husband bin. Okay, what's a husband bin? Well, a husband bin is for scraps where you say, I bought this because it was love at first sight. I loved this scrap and I still love it. And I have had many interactions with it. I may have used it in this project or that project. I've had a lot of go-rounds with this scrap, right? But I still love it and I still want to save it. But after all these years, I don't quite know what it is. Does that sound like the husband bin? Yeah, so that's the husband bin. So then I'm going to put that in there. And there are many uses for scraps that are in the husband bin. So let's talk about color theory, all right? So there are lots of color theories, but these are the ones that I primarily use. Number one, I like to use monochromatic. Monochromatic is simply using one color on the color wheel and its shades and tints and making an entire quilt using just that one color and its shades and tints. Okay, so if you have yellow and you add black, that's a shade. If you have yellow and you add white, that's a tint. And so if you're doing a monochromatic quilt, it's okay to use those colors in the, that color and its shades and tints. And it will work out very well. The science has already been done for us with the color wheel. Someone else has already decided these color theories. I didn't come up with these. These have been done years and years and years in the past, where they will say, you know, complementary. A complementary color scheme, that is one color on one side of the color wheel and its opposite, okay? So that work has been done for us already. We know that those colors go well together. So complementary color scheme is the color on the color wheel with the exact opposite. There's split complementary, which is the color on the color wheel, its exact opposite, and then the ones that are neighboring the exact opposite. We are guaranteed that those are going to look very good together, okay? Then we have an adjacent color scheme. Adjacent color scheme is where you take the color wheel and you pull out a bunch of ones that are next to each other and you put those together in a quilt. So how do we relate that to scrap quilting? Well, you go and you find those tubs. Remember, we just talked about dividing up your scraps according to color in these tubs. So you're going to go grab those tubs that have those colors in that color scheme. And then you're going to pull those out and you're going to ignore the print. Don't pay any attention to what print is on it, just the colors. So take those colors out and use just these colors. That's like an adjacent color scheme. Then there is a triadic color scheme. Triadic simply takes an equilateral triangle. You put it on the color wheel, and whichever colors the points touch, it's guaranteed to look good together. Okay, so like I said, this has been tried and true. This is not something we need to rehash. Science has already determined that those colors look good together. So go and get those bins and pull out those scraps according to those color theories.
Okay, so here's my decision tree that I use when I'm trying to decide what color am I actually going to work with on a quilt. Always use something that makes you extremely happy. Start out with a piece of fabric that you absolutely adore, something in your favorite color, because it'll keep your excitement going through the entire quilt. Don't start with something that you're less than anything but very enthusiastic about. Pick up your color wheel and consider your tints and shades in those colors. And then on the bottom of this tree, there's the 4 color schemes that I usually use when I'm trying to decide what I'm going to do. A lot of times it might be something as simple as the adjacent colors or monochromatic. It keeps it simple and it keeps it moving.
Here's a monochromatic quilt. I love using this color scheme. I absolutely love it because it is so easy. It's so easy to do, and you can disguise so many difficult prints using this scheme. So the first thing you're going to see is the color, and then the pattern, and then you're going to zero in and look at the prints. There are some harder to use pieces in here, but because they're all the same color, they go really well together. Now, why is it monochromatic when you see brown in there? Because brown is a shade of orange. It's simply a shade, it's just orange with black added to it, and that makes it brown. So some browns do lead more red, and so you have to kind of keep an eye on that. But this is just a wonderful way to combine your scraps, and this is using the treasure box technique. Not only can monochromatic quilts take away a lot of anxiety over matching, but they can be very bold and very fun. And I've also included in this monochromatic quilt, which uses all 3 templates, the 3.5, the 4.5, and the 5.5. I've used background pieces that are multiple different colors. So I've used off-whites and whites, and I want to emphasize that you should not be afraid to do this. It gives your quilt a lot of depth and a lot of movement when you do this. So I've used scrappy background in addition. This is a houndstooth pattern, and I'm using just brown. It's a monochromatic color scheme. And when you use that monochromatic color scheme, you just go to that box, you just pull out those scraps, and it doesn't matter if they're a more formal print like this, or a more whimsical print like the Hershey's Kisses. So they're very fun, and it's a great way to use up scraps. First, you're going to see the pattern. This is a very pronounced, vivid, stark, dramatic pattern. And then you're going to see color, and then you're going to see zero in on the scraps. Now let's talk about the adjacent color scheme. I love this color scheme, and I use this a ton because it's so easy to do. I'm just going to go over to my scrap bins, and I'm going to pull out a bunch of scraps that are next to each other like this on the color wheel. Now let's not forget about shades and tints, okay? A shade is simply a color with black added to it, so you're making it darker. A tint is just a color with white added to it. So shades and tints, along with their color, can be used successfully in these adjacent color schemes. So I went to my bin and I started pulling out everything along this part of the color wheel. And this is the quilt that I made. And this uses the hexagon cutting technique. And you can see that there are lots and lots of different fabrics from all different genres. Now, when people make Kaffe Fassett quilts or Tula Pink quilts, they tend to make just Kaffe or just Tula. And then they've got all these scraps left over that they're not sure what to do with, and they look like hard to place pieces. Well, this is a wonderful technique to use an adjacent color scheme to pull these together. And then you can put them together with all kinds of oddball pieces. Don't look at the print, just look at the colors. Just pull them out of your bins and look at the colors and pull out those shades and tints as well. Now, we even got a little bit over into the yellowy orange color over here. But for the most part, we stayed in the pinks and the reds and the oranges on the color wheel. So we were able to combine a lot of different prints that you normally would think were hard to place pieces. So what do you see when you see this quilt? You see color and you see pattern. And then after that, you zoom in and you narrow in on what prints were actually used. And that's the goal. Here's another great example of an adjacent color scheme. Although looking at it, you would not necessarily think that it would be. I used adjacent colors with a neutral and the gray being a neutral. The colors on the color wheel that I used are actually very similar to the last quilt that I showed you. And I started up in the golden yellow and orange yellow and went down as far as the purple, but more of a fuchsia. I didn't get into the blue purples, the purples that were leaning more blue. I definitely used the purples leaning more red. So here is a hard to place piece, this funny looking stripy one, and it kind of does go into the purpley area of the color wheel. And here are the yellow golds. Now when you put this all together, this looks very nice together. And it is using the treasure box cutting technique. Do you see that? That is the treasure box cutting technique right in here. So in this quilt, there are so many different types of pieces. There are hard to place pieces from plums all the way to tomatoes. Now, if I had shown you these scraps and said, put these together in a quilt, you would think that they weren't going to go very well together. But because of the adjacent color scheme and the pattern, you're first seeing pattern and color, and then you're going to zoom in and narrow in on the types of prints that are in there. So there are definitely some harder to place pieces in this quilt, and this is called House Divided and can be found in Rainbow Quilts for Scrap Lovers. Now I want to talk to you about this quilt. This is the cover quilt from Quilts for Scrap Lovers. And we have grouped the colors in these blocks. So all the red colors are grouped together, the greens, the turquoises, the blues, and the oranges. They're grouped together according to color. It's a good trick for disguising some of those odd, bizarre prints that you really think aren't going to go well together. For example, in this blue block, you can see that I have put in hockey helmets and sea life next to butterflies and pears. Up here, we have a green block with salad, right? And you would not ever think that you could put that salad piece into the same quilt with these hockey helmets. But by grouping them according to color, this works out very, very well. This is not any particular color scheme or color theme according to the color wheel. We've just chosen to group these together. This is a great way to disguise some prints. Now, I want to talk about another concept with this particular quilt, and I use the word blanks. So I have incorporated blanks. Now, this is the basic unit of this quilt right here, this block right here. And this block can be laid out in dozens of ways to make dozens of designs, which is a really fun block to make because when you turn them all different directions, you get a different quilt every single time. Now, those blocks are pieced, right? This uses half of the 5.5. These are quarters of the 4.5. And this one is laid on the other half of this using the 3.5-inch square. It's complicated initially, but once you see how it's done, it's very simple and very fast. Now, this was pieced, and instead of putting my builder blocks in between as unpieced blocks, using 4.5-inch squares, because this one is squared down to 4.5 inches, what I did was I pieced this out of multiple background pieces. Each one of these blocks is 4.5 inches. I could have put a solid cone of snow or cone of white, but instead of doing that, I pieced these identical to these blocks. They're pieced identically. And when you do that and you use off-whites in combination with lighter off-whites and darker off-whites and even whites, it puts a lot of dimension into your quilt and gives your eye a place to rest. That's the use of blanks. Here is a quilt where I promised I would talk about the husband box, okay? So here is a quilt that you can use lots and lots of wild fabrics, hard to place pieces in because there's a lot of negative space in between. And this uses that hexagon cutting technique. So remember I said that if you sewed the pieces together on the bias edge, which would be right here, if you sewed them together on the bias edge, you get this shape. So if you put 3 of these shapes together, this is the unit that you get, triangular block. If that's, I guess that doesn't make much sense, does it? A triangular block, but that's what we're going to call it. So here's a hard to place piece right here. This clearly would go in the blue box. This clearly would go in the yellow box, but this one right here would be hard to place. It would most likely have ended up in the husband bucket. So when you put those together, you put them together with neutral colored triangles, which easily could have been done with a solid piece of neutral fabric. It could have just been done with a cone of snow or a white, but I've included lots of different neutral pieces and I've pieced them together. So it's a technique that you can use for things other than just blocks in my books, but say you were going to do Lady of the Lake or corn and beans or shoe fly, and you had 12.5-inch blocks and you made them up with lots of different colors. And you could do an identical block right next to it, piecing it out of neutrals, or you could just put an identical, or not identical, a 12.5-inch unpieced square in between the blocks. So what would be way more fun? It would be certainly more fun to piece those second blocks out, or the in-between blocks out of neutrals. And it would give your quilt a lot more movement and a lot more dimension. Now, another thing I want to mention is a primary design is a good thing, right? Triangles, they're a good thing. A secondary design in a quilt is a great thing. Now, look at this. You can see the primary design or triangles. You can see the diamond shape in here, right? You can also see the hexagons in this quilt. You can also see a kite shape in this quilt. So there's a lot of different designs going on, and that's always emphasized when you use different shadings, like in your neutrals. That's going to bring that out. That's going to pull that out. And you could certainly make 3 or 4 quilts using this hexagon cutting technique and have them all look completely different. And in Sensational Quilts for Scrap Lovers, the cover quilt does just that. And this quilt is identical to the Blended Hexagons one that was the adjacent color scheme. Okay, so think about that when you're quilting. Throw your colors around in different places and see how they land and see how that changes the design. And now I would like to show you an important color stratification technique. I have my green bin here. This is my clear bin full of greens of every type of green. Now, you could do this as a great exercise with your own quilt guild or even amongst friends. You could divide up into teams. One team is going to be a team of a certain number of people, Team A, and Team A is going to all bring their green scraps. Team B will be a certain number of people and they're all going to bring their red scraps. Team C is all going to bring orange scraps, and so on and so forth. So they'll come to the meeting with all of their scraps, and we're going to stratify these scraps. This is where we're going to start splitting hairs. So I've got my color wheel here, and I'm not going to pay any attention to the prints that are in these pieces of fabric. I'm going to find my plain old green. This is just green, 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 nothing else. And we're going to do what would be like a number line. Instead, it's going to be a color line. So here is the green. I'm going to find my greenest scrap, and I've pulled this one out. So the one that looks the most like just plain green, and that's this one. Now I'm going to go over to the greens that are yellow-green, but not yellow. So that would be chartreuse. I'm going to find a chartreuse scrap amongst my scraps, or the very closest one that you can find to chartreuse, and that would be this one right here. It's definitely green, it's not yellow, but it sure has a lot of yellow added to the green. Then over here, I'm not going to go so far as aqua blue, I'm going to stop at aqua green. So something that is aqua green, so a green that is leaning more blue. So I'm going to go through my scrap bin, and I'm going to find a green that is definitely leaning more blue. Okay, so that's this one here. So I'm going to put them in a line, okay? So now I'm going to fill in. And we're going to find friends for these. So now I've got another scrap here. This, no, it does not have enough yellow in it. That's pretty green. It certainly doesn't have blue in it. Make sure you put a light colored background, a white or an off-white background when you're doing this so that not to confuse your colors. Okay, so I'm going to put that in the green pile. Now I'm going to take another scrap here. This is really leaning very yellow, but it's certainly not as yellow as the chartreuse, and it isn't going to go with those blues. Or the blue-greens. So I'm going to put it right there, kind of in the middle. And then this scrap right here, oh, I remember this one. This was a fun one. I used this to make an umbrella. So this is going to definitely, does it go with the chartreuse? Yeah, it's closer to that. It certainly doesn't go with this. It certainly doesn't go with that. Okay, so we're going to put it over here in this pile with those friends. All right. So now I'm going to continue to do this. I'm going to grab another green. Maybe this one right here. This one is not yellow green, not blue green, but it's pretty green. So we're going to do that one right there. Then we have this one here. This one, well, it's not very green. It certainly isn't yellow green. It is definitely leaning more blue green. I'm going to put it with those blue greens over there. Now we're going to continue to do this with our scraps in our green scrap bin, and we're going to continue to stratify these colors. Here's one that's a hard to place piece. This one here has a lot of different greens in it. It's a harder to place one. It doesn't look bad with the greens. I could leave it there. I don't like it with the yellow greens. It's actually not too bad with the blue greens, but you know what? I'm going to leave it right there. This one right here, it's a green with some pretty music notes. We're not paying any attention to the print. We're going to put it with the yellow greens. No. Green greens. No. It definitely belongs with the blue greens. Okay, so we're going to continue to do this with our green bucket. And then we're going to grab up the different piles. Now this pile is going to be a block with just greens, and it doesn't matter what we do in this block. If we put these together, it doesn't matter what kind of prints we have something that's going to look really good together because they're all in the same colorway of green. And then if we put these together and made a block, they would be very pretty together. The block would be very pretty, pleasing to the eye. We would draw attention away from the actual print. We could do a block with that. We could also do a block with the blue greens. But of course, we'd have a much bigger piles if we continued to stratify them in this way. You can do this with your reds. You can do this with your yellows. You can also do this with your even your browns, even those kinds of things, and your oranges. It's a great way to disguise prints so that you can put multiple prints into a quilt where you're paying more attention to the color and the pattern, and then you zero in on the print. Here's one. Wow, this must have been from a garment or something. This is very much leaning yellow-green, and I would probably put it in, but now this knocks this out of here. So make sure you have enough pieces in your pile so that you can be discriminate. So this would go in with the yellow greens, but then this one doesn't look so good. So you can remove that and put it in its own spot and find more friends for it.
The point that I wanted to make about that last exercise we did is that then you can make a quilt that looks like this. You can start up in the upper left-hand corner with your reds, and you move down toward orange, but you do it gradually. So you find all your reds that lean orange. Then you find your oranges that lean red. Now this is the treasure box technique. This is the treasure box cutting technique right here. And it uses all three sizes of templates when you're making this quilt. So you're going to find your oranges that lean red, your reds that lean orange. You've got orange. Then you're going to find your oranges that lean yellow and your yellows that lean more orange. And in doing this, you're going to go all the way over and down to green. You're going to find your yellows that lean green and your greens that lean yellow. And you're going to continue to make this quilt like this. And you can disguise a lot of different prints because what's the first thing your eye is going to see? With this quilt, it's the color. And then you're going to look at the pattern. And this goes all the way down to purple in the corner. So all the blues that lean purple and the blues that lean green, right? There's some blues that lean green. And you're going to go all the way down to the blues that lean purple. And you can even do this with a section of the color wheel. It does not have to be the whole thing. You could do it with a section. And that's kind of what we do with adjacent color schemes. But this is a great quilt to do. Fun, easy, actually pretty fast. And it disguises a lot of prints because the first thing you're seeing is the color. And it's a great way to disguise prints, even if it's not this quilt, even if it's any other quilt using just different blocks. It's a great way to disguise those prints because you are moving along a color transition. Just like I showed you when we were dividing up those greens in that box. You're transitioning the color, and that's what your eye is going to see. And it's going to disguise a lot of different prints and allow you to marry a lot of different prints within that quilt. In conclusion, all's well that ends well. This quilt is in Rainbow Quilts for Scrap Lovers, and it's a perfect example of that transitioning, color transitioning. That is a green owl. That owl is a purples that lean more red. This is yellows that lean more orange. Purples that lean more blue, and blues that lean more purple also. Great way to combine a lot of scraps that you might not think would normally go together. So, all's well that ends well. I hope you've enjoyed this video about using up odd scraps, and I hope you have renewed energy and excitement about using them up.
Thank you for joining us for Sensational Scraps for, excuse me, let me start again. Sensational Quilts for Scrap Lovers. Lovely quilts, difficult for Deanna to say today. Thank you for joining us, and we're glad to have Judy here from her Bungalow Quilting and Yarn shop in Ripon, Wisconsin. Welcome, Judy.
Hi, thank you. I'm very delighted to be here.
Wonderful. And we have questions for your live Q&A. We do have questions rolling in. Lots of people asking about your color wheel you showed in your presentation, and where could they purchase that color wheel?
You can go online and purchase that at CNT Publishing. So cntpublishing.com.
And that's the same publisher with your books, correct?
Correct. That's correct. I do believe it might be available on Amazon too if you go to CNT Publishing Color Wheel, but they are the ones that are putting that color wheel out. Yes.
Fabulous. It's a nice size and a nice reference to have, especially with your techniques you're sharing today. Elizabeth is asking, thanks so much for the color sorting. Do your books indicate yardage for quilts if we don't have so many scraps?
The first book will indicate, my first book, Quilts for Scrap Lovers, does have some indication for yardage. The other ones, yeah, they give some general rule of thumb in terms of approximate yardage for scraps, yes.
Very good. Our next question is from Pam. It's about organizing. How do you organize your holiday themed fabrics?
Those are completely on a shelf according to holiday. So that's a good observation that she made, that I don't put holidays in with general scrap quilts. So yes, the holiday ones have their own separate bin and their own separate shelf. So Christmas is on one, Halloween is on another. Yeah, that's how and Valentine's is on another.
We'll keep those scraps separately, those fabrics separate. And
Correct.
Jerry from Colorado is asking, when you pull your scraps, do you make sure you have a good mix of values?
Yes, I do. That when I'm pulling them, I'm primarily pulling by color. And then I don't know if I had mentioned in the video that you definitely want to leave your quilt sitting out for a number of days, because to me, value is not something simple that you can look at and decide, yes, right away that it's light or dark. That changes with the time of day. It changes with, so that is something you have to actually stare at for a long time. That's not a quick decision. So when I actually pull, no, I'm not really looking for value. At that time, I'm looking for print and color. And then as it's sitting out, kind of like wine, letting it sit, then I look for value.
Good advice. And Betty is asking, is there a specific color family that is easy for a beginning quilter to use when choosing colors for their first quilt?
Always go to the one you love. Always go to your favorite color, especially for the newcomers to the quilt craft. You don't want to get discouraged, and you don't want to find something to become onerous. So always go with what color makes your heart sing. That is my best advice for that.
Yeah, we'll gravitate to those colors we love. Pat from Portage, Wisconsin is asking, Judy, do you include your sorting methods in your quilt books as well as the color wheel explanation within your books?
Yes, I do. There's a section in the beginning of each of the books that has the descriptions and the, yes. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Thanks for including that for our reference. Lou is asking, are shades and tints the same as value and intensity?
No, it's not at all the same. Shades are just simply a color with black added. Tint is simply a color with white added. It doesn't necessarily mean that when you're putting it together in a quilt, it's going to definitely be a light or a dark. Okay, so again, like I just mentioned before, that is something that is going to take time to look at. That is something that you have to look at for a long period of time after you've added that piece where you think you might want it to go. Let it simmer for a little bit and stare at it for a while in comparison with the other pieces, because value is always relative.
Okay. And Mary from Illinois is asking, when you shop for fabric, do you have an eye for color only? So now that you're the expert, do you only see color when you're shopping for your fabrics?
No. I'm very much, I don't know if you want to use the word romantic or what, but I always go for what makes my heart sing. Always. When I go into a shop, I'm never looking for a specific color. I'm always looking for, what do I love? What do I see in here that just makes me run to it and say, I love you and I need to have you in my collection? That's how I do it. And when I buy fabrics for the shop, that's how I do it too. And somehow or another, it all sorts itself out. It just does. And we have probably the same equal number of colors on my shelves in the shop. It just sorts itself out.
Yes, gravitate towards what you love, and your quilts are spectacular. I don't tire of looking at them. And you were Nancy's guest on Sewing with Nancy for Rainbow Quilts for Scrap Lovers, and I recognize a couple from that. And I'll be rewatching your video at quiltshow.com, and you can also watch Judy and Nancy at nancyzieman.com for their Sewing with Nancy episode on their scrap making too. We'll go back to questions, Judy. Sherry is asking, do you use a stabilizer when you're piecing your smaller scraps?
Only if the scrap feels like it's going to stretch. So if it feels like it's going to give me trouble, then I do. And most of the time when I do that, it's not spray starch. Most of the time I'll throw a little scrap of interfacing, iron-on interfacing. Yeah, so that's what I would use as opposed to using starch, but only if it's going to give me trouble.
Okay, just for those trouble pieces.
Right.
Gwen is asking, how do you match with gray?
That's a very, very good question, because grays very much lean one way or another. So Moda Fabrics, a lot of their grays lean brown. Michael Miller, a lot of their grays tend to lean more blue. And so again, that's a matter of looking at it at different times of the day. So that's a matter of having it laying out someplace that you're walking past it all the time, and don't get in a rush to put these things together. Look at them over and over and over again. Move them around and compare them to other pieces, because they change. They really do.
Good advice. And Heather is asking, do you have any tips on when to use off-white neutral backgrounds rather than pure white backgrounds for a scrap quilt?
Okay, so that's another excellent question that I usually address when I'm doing my lectures. People have been kind of roped into thinking that you can only use a white, say if a piece of fabric has a white petal or to a flower, or then they are always looking for a filler that's white. I tend to use both. I use both off-white and white. it is a question of what looks good, because sometimes I'll pull a piece of fabric and it'll look really good. Even though that piece of fabric has white in it, that off-white piece looks really good with it. So don't be constrained by saying, but I can't use it because that's pure white. Don't let yourself be constrained by that. Always take a look at how it looks with the other pieces that are in the quilt.
Thanks for that permission to marry fabrics together that we wouldn't think were going to go together.
Great.
Another question from a viewer: how do you decide which color for the background of the quilt blocks? For the background.
For the background of the quilt blocks, how do I
Right.
decide which color?
You choose your scraps, and then how do you decide if you want a white or an off-white or your background color, your opposite block colors?
I usually lay them out once again, with pieces. I audition them. I audition them, try to keep the lighting source pure, whether it's by a window or whatever, but just audition them to see which one looks good and then go with that.
Do you find yourself using a lot of whites and off-whites for that, or do you tend to go try deeper colors too, darker colors?
I do. That's just my preference, but deeper and darker colors are really dramatic when people use those. But that just, everybody has kind of their signature style and the signature look that they do, and that happens to be what I use. I tend to go with the light.
A viewer is asking, Judy, how did you get started in quilting?
Oh, I've been sewing since I was 9 years old, and I started when my kids decided that they weren't going to wear the clothes that I was making for them. And they decided that they didn't want to. And so since I loved garment sewing, I thought, fine, if I can't sew making garments, I'll make quilts. And so that's what started the whole scrap thing. Was I didn't feel like I could go out and buy all this new fabric for quilting, because I had all these scraps from making garments. And that's kind of what started the whole scrap quilting thing going.
And Judy, you have a quilt and yarn shop now. What was your career before you got into shop owner?
I'm a registered nurse, and I work in critical care. And I just retired from that. And I don't want to say retired because you never know when you're going to end up going back. But about a year and a half ago, I stopped working because the business was too much to take care of while I was still practicing as a nurse.
Well, we're so glad you're quilting and sharing your techniques and giving us permission to combine fabrics that we wouldn't think of, and to use up our scraps. I especially like the background, using the tonal pieces, piecing them together as background blocks to use up our scraps. So nice job, Judy. It's always great talking with you. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm totally delighted.
Oh, thanks, Judy. And we're glad that all of you are joining us too. And be sure to head over to our website and take in the virtual quilt exhibits at quiltshow.com, and you click on the vendor mall and you'll find Judy and Bungalow Quilting and Yarn in the vendor mall. Enjoy.